The night Alden Kerrick heard the soldiers ride into his valley, he was already half certain he would be dead by morning. Not from their swords, but from the lie he was about to tell them. He stood at his farmhouse window, watching torchlight bloom across the distant hillside like fireflies made of malice. They were hunting someone. That much was clear from the way they spread out, systematic and ruthless, beating through the grain fields that bordered his modest property. Alden had lived through enough war to recognize the pattern: search and destroy. The King's 5th Regiment, if he was reading their formation correctly, which meant they had official sanction for whatever brutality they were about to commit. His hand trembled slightly as he set down his tin cup of lukewarm tea. 3 years since he had left the army. 3 years of quiet farming, of trying to wash the blood from his memories with honest sweat and turned earth. He had chosen this remote valley precisely because it was far from everything, far from the politics and violence that had consumed his youth. And now violence had found him anyway, riding hard with torches and steel. Alden was 32 years old, lean and weathered from outdoor work, with brown hair that was starting to show premature gray at the temples. His face had once been handsome in an unremarkable way, but a scar along his left jaw from an old battle wound gave him a harder edge now. He dressed simply in homespun clothes, nothing to distinguish him from any other frontier farmer except perhaps the military precision with which he maintained his small homestead. Everything squared away, everything orderly. The habits of a soldier died hard. He was reaching for his coat when he heard the noise from the barn. It was barely audible over the wind, just a faint scrape of wood on wood, but it froze him in place. Someone was in his hayloft, someone who did not want to be found. Alden grabbed the hunting knife from his belt and moved silently across the yard, avoiding the patches of moonlight. The barn door hung slightly ajar, which was wrong because he always secured it before nightfall. Inside, the darkness was complete except for thin lines of silver where moonlight leaked through gaps in the walls. The smell of hay and horses filled his nostrils. His mare, Dusty, stood quiet in her stall, but her ears were pricked forward, attentive to something above. "I know you are up there," Alden said quietly. "The soldiers are coming. If you are who they are looking for, you have about 5 minutes to decide whether you want to take your chances with me or with them." Silence. Then a voice from the darkness of the loft, rough and feminine and afraid. "I will not go back." Something in those 4 words hit Alden harder than he expected. There was a quality of absolute finality to them, a desperation that he recognized from his own worst moments. This was someone who would die before surrendering. "Are you hurt?" he asked. Another pause. "Yes." "How badly?" "I can still fight." "That was not what I asked." A longer silence this time. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter, as though admitting weakness cost her something precious. "Arrow wound, left shoulder, 2 days old." "I got the arrow out, but the bleeding will not stop completely." Alden cursed under his breath. 2 days meant infection was almost certain if the wound had not been properly cleaned. And if she was still bleeding, the arrowhead might have nicked something important. "Listen to me very carefully," he said. "The soldiers will be here soon. They will search my barn. There is a space beneath the hayloft, a false floor I built to store grain where the rats cannot get it. If you can move quietly and follow my instructions exactly, I can hide you there. But you need to trust me, and you need to do it now." "Why would you help me?" Suspicion laced every word. "You do not even know what I am." "I know you are running from the King's 5th Regiment, which means you are either a criminal or you pissed off someone important. Either way, I have no love for those bastards. And I know you are bleeding in my hayloft, which makes you my problem whether I like it or not." He heard movement above. the careful shifting of someone trying to navigate in the dark while injured. Then she appeared at the edge of the loft, and Alden got his first clear look at her in a shaft of moonlight. She was an orc. He kept his expression neutral, but his heart kicked hard against his ribs. Orcs were rare this far south, and the ones who came were usually raiders or warriors. This woman was neither. She was young, maybe 20 at most, with the green skin and small tusks that marked her heritage, but there was something different about her. Her face was rounder, softer than the orc fighters he had encountered during the war. Her dark hair was matted with sweat and dirt, hanging loose past her shoulders. She wore simple travel clothes, leather and rough wool, stained dark with blood around her left shoulder. Despite the obvious pain she was in, she held herself with a fierce pride, her amber eyes watching him with the wariness of a cornered animal. "An orc," Alden said, keeping his voice level. "That explains the hunting party. If you are going to turn me in, do it now," she said. "But I swear by stone and sky, I will take at least one of you with me." "Easy," Alden said, raising his empty hands. "I made you an offer and I am keeping it. Your species does not change that, but we are out of time. Can you climb down?" She studied him for a long moment, clearly trying to determine if this was some kind of trap. Then she nodded once and began to descend the ladder, moving stiffly but with determination. Up close, Alden could see she was shaking slightly, whether from blood loss or fear he could not tell. "Follow me," he said, moving to the back of the barn. "And for the love of all that is holy, do not make any noise." He led her to a section of the floor that looked identical to the rest, but when he lifted a nearly invisible catch, an entire section of planking came up, revealing a shallow space about 6 feet long and 3 feet deep. It was lined with oilcloth to keep moisture out and usually held sacks of grain. Alden had emptied it last week and not yet refilled it. "Get in," he said. "I am going to lower the floor and stack hay bales over it. There is enough air circulation that you will not suffocate, but you need to stay absolutely silent. Do not move, do not cough, do not breathe loud. If they find you, we are both dead. Do you understand?" She looked at the space with obvious reluctance. It was small, confining, a trap if things went wrong. But the sound of horses was growing louder now, echoing across the valley. "Why are you doing this?" she asked again. Alden met her eyes. In the dim light, they were the color of honey and filled with a vulnerability she was trying hard to hide. "Because nobody should have to run forever," he said. "Now get in." She climbed down into the space, moving awkwardly because of her injured shoulder. Alden lowered the floor as gently as he could, then began stacking hay bales over it in a pattern that looked natural but would also muffle any sound from below. He was just finishing when he heard the soldiers enter his yard. Alden walked out of the barn slowly, making sure his hands were visible and his posture was relaxed. 12 soldiers on horseback formed a semicircle around his farmhouse, torches casting wild shadows. Their leader was a captain named Dryden, a man Alden vaguely remembered from his army days. Dryden had been a lieutenant back then, competent but cruel, the kind of officer who enjoyed having power over others. "Kerrick," Dryden said, his voice carrying the easy authority of someone used to being obeyed. "Been a long time." "Captain," Alden replied with a neutral nod. "What brings the King's Fifth out here?" "Hunting," Dryden said, swinging down from his horse. "We are tracking a fugitive. Orc woman about 20 years old, green skin, traveling alone. She killed a nobleman's son 3 days ago and fled north. Tracks suggest she came through this valley." Alden kept his face carefully blank. "I have not seen anyone. It has been quiet out here." Dryden studied him with narrow eyes. "You sure about that? Because you were always a bad liar, Kerrick, even back in the war." I have no reason to lie to you, Captain. If an orc came through here, I would tell you I value my life more than that. Then you will not mind if we search your property, Dryden said. It was not a question. Alden shrugged. Be my guest, but do not spook my horse. She is old and does not like strangers. Dryden gestured to his men, who dismounted and began to spread out. 4 headed for the barn. Alden forced himself to stand still, to breathe normally, to give no sign of the cold terror crawling up his spine. If they found her, Dryden would kill them both. There would be no trial, no questions. Just blood and fire, and the kind of cruelty that came easy to men like him. The soldiers tore through his barn with ruthless efficiency, stabbing hay bales with their swords, checking the stalls, climbing into the loft. Alden could hear them overhead, their boots heavy on the wooden planks. He prayed silently that the orc woman would stay quiet, that her injury would not make her gasp or moan, that the false floor would hold. One of the soldiers came back out, shaking his head. Nothing, Captain, just hay and a horse. Dryden was not satisfied. Check the house, check the root cellar. Check every damned inch of this place. They spent the better part of an hour searching, and Alden stood in his yard the whole time, watching them violate his home with a growing rage that he kept locked behind his teeth. They overturned furniture, scattered his possessions, dumped out his stores of flour and salt as though he could somehow hide a full-grown orc in a grain sack. By the time they finished, his modest farmhouse looked like a battlefield. Finally, Dryden emerged, his face tight with frustration. Where is she, Kerrick? I told you I have not seen anyone. She came through here. I know she did. The tracks lead right to your property. Then maybe she kept going, Alden said. This is a valley, Captain, not a dead end. If she was running north, she could be miles from here by now. Dryden stepped close enough that Alden could smell the wine on his breath. You are hiding something, I can feel it. You are imagining things, Alden said quietly. You have searched my home. You found nothing. Either arrest me for a crime I did not commit or get off my land. For a long moment, Dryden looked like he might do exactly that. His hand drifted to the sword at his hip, and Alden tensed, ready to fight even though it would be suicide. Then one of the other soldiers called out, Captain, we found tracks leading up the north ridge. Fresh, heading toward the tree line. Dryden hesitated, torn between his suspicion and the evidence. Finally, he stepped back. This is not over, Kerrick, he said. If I find out you lied to me, I will come back here and burn this place to the ground with you in it. Noted, Alden said flatly. The soldiers mounted up and rode off toward the north ridge, their torches bobbing like angry stars. Alden watched them go until the last light disappeared over the hill. Then he stood there for another 10 minutes, listening, making sure they were truly gone and not circling back to catch him in the act. Finally, when he was certain it was safe, he went back into the barn. He moved the hay bales carefully, then lifted the false floor. The orc woman looked up at him with wide eyes, her face pale green in the moonlight. She was conscious, but barely. The stress and the confinement and the blood loss had taken their toll. They are gone, Alden said quietly. For now, can you stand? She nodded and tried to push herself up, but her left arm would not support her weight. Alden reached down and carefully helped her out of the hiding space, taking most of her weight as she climbed free. She was tall, nearly his own height, and solid with muscle despite her youth. But right now she felt fragile, trembling with exhaustion. We need to get you inside and treat that wound properly, Alden said. Can you walk? Yes, she said, but her legs buckled almost immediately. Alden caught her before she fell, slipping his arm around her waist. Stubborn, he muttered. All right, lean on me. And try not to bleed on my floor, I just cleaned it last week. It was a poor attempt at humor, but he saw the corner of her mouth twitch slightly. They made it across the yard and into the farmhouse, which was still in complete disarray from the search. Alden guided her to the sturdy wooden table in his kitchen and helped her sit. "Stay here," he said. "I need to get supplies." He moved quickly, gathering what he needed. Clean cloth for bandages, his sewing kit, a bottle of strong alcohol that he usually saved for winter nights, hot water from the kettle that was always simmering over his fire. When he came back, the orc woman was hunched over the table, her good hand pressed against her wounded shoulder, her breathing shallow. "I need to see the wound," Alden said. "Can you remove your shirt, or do you need help?" She looked at him warily, then slowly began to unlace her leather vest with her good hand. The movement was clumsy and painful, and after a moment, Alden gently pushed her hand aside. "Let me," he said. "I was a field medic during the war. I have seen it all before." She did not protest, which told him how badly she was hurting. Alden carefully removed her vest and the shirt beneath, trying to be as professional and impersonal as possible. The wound was worse than he had feared. The arrow had punched through the meat of her left shoulder, and while she had managed to remove it, the hole was ragged and inflamed. Infection was already setting in, the skin around the wound hot and angry. "This is going to hurt," Alden warned. "A lot. I need to clean it out and stitch it closed, and I do not have anything to numb the pain except this." He held up the bottle of alcohol. She looked at it, then back at him, and nodded once. "Do what you must," she said. Alden poured her a generous measure in a cup. "Drink this first, all of it." She drank it in 3 hard swallows, her face twisting at the burn. Then Alden poured more alcohol directly onto the wound. She made a sound that was somewhere between a gasp and a snarl, her good hand gripping the edge of the table hard enough that the wood creaked. But she did not pull away, did not scream. She just held herself rigid while Alden worked, cleaning out the wound with steady hands, removing bits of debris and dead tissue. He had done this dozens of times during the war, usually in worse conditions and with worse injuries, but his stomach still turned at the thought of causing her pain. "You are doing well," he said quietly. "The worst part is almost over." "You are a terrible liar," she gasped. Despite everything, Alden smiled. "You are right. The worst part is actually next. I need to stitch it closed." He worked as quickly as he could, his needle moving through her skin with the efficiency of long practice. She bore it in silence, though he could see sweat beading on her forehead and her tusks were clenched so tight he worried she might crack them. When he finally tied off the last stitch and bandaged the wound, her whole body sagged with relief. "Done," Alden said, stepping back. "You should rest now. The infection is going to make you feverish, and you need to keep that shoulder immobilized for at least a week." "I cannot stay here," she said, her voice hoarse. "If the soldiers come back, they will not. Not tonight, anyway, and you are in no condition to travel. You would die before you made it a mile." She looked at him with those amber eyes, and he saw the conflict in them. She did not want to trust him. Every instinct she had was probably screaming at her to run, but she was also smart enough to know he was right. "Why are you helping me?" she asked for the 3rd time. Alden pulled out a chair and sat down across from her, suddenly aware of how tired he was. "Honestly, I am not entirely sure. Maybe because I am tired of seeing people hunted like animals. Maybe because I owe a debt to someone who helped me once, a long time ago, and this is my way of paying it forward. Or maybe I am just old and stupid and do not like being told what to do by bastards like Captain Dryden." "He knows you," she observed. "I used to be a soldier. We served together years ago, different ranks, different companies, but the same war." "You do not fight anymore." "No," Alden said simply. "I retired, bought this land and decided to grow things instead of killing things. It has been a nice 3 years. Until tonight." Until tonight, he agreed. They sat in silence for a moment. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the shutters. The fire in the hearth crackled softly. "What is your name?" Alden asked. She hesitated, as though even that small piece of information was dangerous to share. Then she said, "Gryaza." "Gryaza," Alden repeated, trying to get the pronunciation right. "I am Alden Kerrick." "I know," she said. "The captain used your name." "Right." He rubbed his face, feeling the stubble on his jaw. "Look, Gryaza, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." "Did you kill a nobleman's son?" Her expression hardened. "Yes." "Why?" "Because he tried to rape me." The words hung in the air like smoke. Alden felt something cold and hard settle in his chest. "Tell me what happened," he said quietly. Gryaza looked away, staring at the fire. When she spoke, her voice was carefully controlled, as though she was trying to distance herself from the memory. "I was working at an inn, 3 days south of here. Cleaning rooms, hauling water, the kind of work nobody else wants. The innkeeper did not care that I was an orc as long as I worked hard and did not cause trouble. It was not much, but it was honest. Then the nobleman and his party came through. Lord Gareth Ashford and his friends out hunting. They were drunk and loud and cruel, the way rich men often are when they think nobody can touch them." She paused, her good hand curling into a fist. "The second night, Lord Ashford came to my room. He said I should be grateful for his attention. He said orc women were animals anyway, so it did not matter. I told him to leave. He laughed and grabbed me, so I fought back." "And you killed him," Alden said. "I did not mean to," Gryaza said, and for the first time there was a tremor in her voice. "I just wanted him off me. I pushed him hard and he fell. Hit his head on the corner of the bed frame. By the time I realized what happened, he was already dead." "What did you do?" "I ran. What else could I do? I am an orc. He was a human nobleman. No matter what the truth was, I would be the one who hanged. So I took what little I had and I ran north, hoping I could make it to the mountains where my mother's clan lives. But the soldiers caught my trail. They have been chasing me ever since." Alden sat back, processing this. Everything she said had the ring of truth. He had known men like Lord Ashford during his time in the army, the kind who thought their rank and wealth put them above consequences. And he knew how the law worked when it came to orcs. She was right. She would have hanged, trial or no trial. "I am sorry," he said finally, "for what he did to you, and for what you have had to go through since." Gryaza looked at him with surprise, as though she had not expected sympathy. "You believe me?" "Yes," Alden said. "I do." Something in her eyes softened, just a fraction. "Thank you. Do not thank me yet," Alden said. "Those soldiers are going to be back. Maybe not tonight, but soon. Dryden is not the type to give up easily. We need to figure out what to do next." "I need to reach the Iron Peak Mountains," Gryaza said. "My mother's clan is there. They will protect me." "That is at least a week's travel on foot, longer if you are injured. And every town between here and there will be on alert by now. Dryden will send word ahead, post guards on the roads. You will never make it alone." "Then what do you suggest?" Alden hesitated. What he was about to say was probably insane. It would put him at risk, would destroy the quiet life he had built here. But looking at this young orc woman, wounded and alone and terrified despite her brave face, he could not bring himself to turn away. "You stay here," he said. "Until you are healed, until the search dies down. I will tell anyone who asks that I live alone, same as always. You stay hidden, stay quiet, and when the time is right, I will help you get to the mountains." "That could be weeks," Gryaza said. "Months even. I know." "You would risk your life for that long. For me, for an orc you do not even know, apparently," Alden said with a faint smile. "Like I said, old and stupid." Gryaza stared at him, and he saw her throat work as she swallowed hard. Then she nodded just once. I accept your help, she said formally, and I swear I will repay this debt, Alden Kerrick, on my honor and the honor of my clan. Just try not to bleed on my furniture, Alden said, trying to lighten the moment, and we will call it even. This time she actually smiled, small and fleeting but real. It transformed her face, made her look younger and less guarded. Now, Alden said, standing up, you need to sleep. I will set up a bed for you in the back room. It is small, but it has a door that locks and a window you can escape from if necessary, just in case. Where will you sleep? Out here. I sleep light, and if anyone comes, I will hear them first. He helped her to the back room, which was barely more than a storage space with a narrow bed. But it was clean and private, and Gryaza sank onto the mattress with a sigh of relief. Alden brought her a blanket and another cup of water. Get some rest, he said. I will wake you if there is trouble. Alden, she said as he turned to leave. He paused in the doorway. Yes, thank you. Truly? He nodded, not trusting himself to speak, and closed the door softly behind him. Alden spent the rest of the night cleaning up the mess the soldiers had made, his mind racing. He had just committed an act of treason, harboring a fugitive accused of murdering a nobleman. If Dryden found out, there would be no mercy. And yet, he could not bring himself to regret it. There was something about Gryaza, some quality of fierce determination mixed with vulnerability, that called to a part of him he thought he had buried with his military career. The part that still believed in doing the right thing, even when it was hard, even when it was dangerous. As dawn began to gray the eastern sky, Alden finally allowed himself to sleep, curled in a chair by the fire with his knife within easy reach. His last thought before exhaustion took him was that his quiet life was well and truly over, and somehow he was all right with that. The next few days fell into a careful routine. Alden went about his normal work, tending his small herd of sheep, working in his vegetable garden, repairing fences. To any observer, he was just a solitary farmer going about his business. But inside the house, Gryaza was slowly recovering. The infection in her shoulder spiked a fever on the second day, and Alden spent a terrifying night keeping her cool with wet cloths and forcing her to drink water mixed with herbs. She was delirious for hours, muttering in the orc language, her skin hot enough to burn. Alden stayed by her side the whole time, changing her bandages, monitoring the wound, praying to gods he was not sure he believed in that she would pull through. By dawn, the fever broke. Gryaza woke weak and drained but lucid, her eyes finding Alden where he sat slumped in a chair beside her bed. You stayed, she said, her voice barely a whisper. Someone had to make sure you did not die in my guest room, Alden said, trying to sound casual despite the exhaustion that made his bones ache. It would have been terrible for property values. She smiled at that, a real smile that showed her tusks. You are very strange, Alden Kerrick. I have been told that before. As the days passed and Gryaza's strength returned, they began to talk. At first it was just small things, practical conversations about her needs and his daily schedule. But gradually, the conversations deepened. Alden found himself telling her about his time in the army, about the battles he had fought and the friends he had lost, about the moment he realized he could not kill anymore, that the violence was eating him from the inside out. Gryaza, in turn, told him about growing up in her clan, about the complex social structures of orc society that humans rarely saw, about her mother, a warrior of great renown, and her father, a human trader who had won her mother's heart and her clan's grudging acceptance before dying in a rockslide when Gryaza was 10. I am half human, Gryaza explained one evening as they sat at the kitchen table, sharing a simple meal of bread and stew. That is why I look different from most orcs. Softer features, smaller tusks, Some in my clan saw it as weakness. They said I would never be a true warrior like my mother. Is that why you left? Alden asked. Partly, she admitted. I wanted to prove I could make my own way, that I did not need the clan's protection or approval. I thought if I could work among humans, show that not all orcs are monsters, maybe I could bridge the gap between our peoples. How did that work out? Alden asked gently. Gryaz's expression darkened. You already know the answer to that. Not all humans are like Lord Ashford, Alden said. No, she agreed, looking at him. Not all. There was something in her gaze that made Alden's heart beat a little faster. He looked away, focusing on his stew, trying to ignore the warmth spreading through his chest. The routine continued. Gryaza grew stronger each day, though Alden insisted she keep her arm in a sling and avoid strenuous activity. She was a restless patient, constantly wanting to help with chores, to do something useful. Finally, Alden relented and let her help with small tasks. She was clever with her hands, and before long she was mending his clothes with neat stitches, organizing his chaotic pantry, even helping prepare meals. They worked well together, Alden discovered. There was an ease to their interactions that surprised him. He had lived alone for so long that he had forgotten what it was like to share space with someone, to have another person's presence be comforting rather than intrusive. Gryaza seemed to feel the same way. She relaxed around him, the constant wariness in her eyes fading to something softer. 2 weeks after she had arrived, Alden was working in his garden when he heard a horse approaching. His blood went cold. He straightened, reaching casually for the hoe in case he needed a weapon, and turned to see a rider coming up the path. It was not a soldier, thank the gods. It was his neighbor Thomas, a gruff older man who owned the farm 3 miles to the east. Thomas rarely visited, preferring to keep to himself, which was one of the reasons Alden had chosen this location. Thomas, Alden called out, keeping his voice friendly. This is a surprise. Thomas dismounted, moving with the stiffness of age. Alden, thought I should check on you. Heard the soldiers came through the other night. They did, Alden confirmed. Tore my place apart looking for someone. Did not find anything, of course. Heard they were hunting an orc, Thomas said, watching Alden's face carefully. That is what they said. You did not see anything? Not a thing, Alden said, meeting his neighbor's eyes steadily. Whatever they were chasing, it did not come through here. Thomas nodded slowly. That is good. Orcs are dangerous. Bad business. So I have heard, Alden said neutrally. They talked for a few more minutes about weather and crops and other safe topics. The whole time, Alden was acutely aware of the house behind him, of Gryaza hidden inside. If she made any noise, if Thomas decided to come in for a cup of tea, the whole careful deception would collapse. Finally, Thomas mounted up again. You take care, Alden, and if you do see anything strange, you let folks know. We have to watch out for each other out here. Of course, Alden said. Safe travels, Thomas. He watched his neighbor ride away, not moving until he was completely out of sight. Then he went back inside, where Gryaza was standing by the window, her face pale. He suspected something, she said. Maybe, Alden admitted, or maybe he was just being neighborly. Either way, we need to be more careful. No lights in the back room after dark. No noise during the day when I am outside. We cannot afford any mistakes. Gryaza nodded, but Alden could see the fear in her eyes. She was realizing what he had known from the start. This could not last forever. Sooner or later, someone would figure it out. That night, Alden could not sleep. He sat by the fire staring at the flames, wondering what the hell he was doing. He had risked everything for this orc woman, and for what? A sense of justice, loneliness. Or was it something else? Something he was afraid to name. You should rest. Gryaza's voice came from behind him. He turned to see her standing in the doorway of her room, wrapped in a blanket. Her shoulder was healing well. The angry red of infection faded to a healthier pink. "I could say the same to you," Alden replied. She came and sat in the other chair, pulling the blanket tighter around herself. "I have been thinking about what happens next. And I should leave soon. My shoulder is better. I can travel. Every day I stay here puts you in more danger." "You are not ready yet," Alden said. "Another week at least to make sure the wound has fully closed, and we need to wait for the search to die down. Right now, every road north will be watched. And in a week, a month, there will always be a reason to wait, Alden. You know that." He did know that, and he hated that she was right. "I have been thinking too," he said slowly. "When you are ready to go, I will come with you, at least part of the way. You will need supplies, someone to watch your back. The mountains are 3 weeks' travel from here, and you cannot make that journey alone." "You would do that?" Gryaza asked. "Abandon your farm, your life here, just to help me?" "The farm will still be here when I get back," Alden said. "And my life here is not as important as making sure you survive." "Why?" Gryaza asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why do you care so much?" Alden looked at her, really looked at her. In the firelight, her green skin had a warm glow, and her amber eyes were searching his face with an intensity that made his breath catch. When had she become beautiful to him? When had the sight of her smile become the best part of his day? "Because you matter," he said simply. "You matter to me." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Gryaza's eyes widened and he saw her swallow hard. "Alden, She started, then stopped as though she did not know how to finish. "You do not have to say anything," Alden said quickly. "I know this is complicated. I know there are 1,000 reasons why this is impossible. I just needed you to know. That is all." For a long moment they sat in silence. Then Gryaza reached out with her good hand and took his, her grip warm and strong. "It matters to me too," she said quietly. "More than I expected. More than I should allow." Alden's heart was pounding so hard he was sure she could hear it. He turned his hand over, lacing his fingers through hers. "Then we will figure it out," he said. "Somehow." She smiled, sad and hopeful at once. "You really are a terrible liar, Alden Kerrick. But I am glad you are." They sat like that for a long time, holding hands in the firelight, neither willing to break the fragile connection between them. Outside, the wind howled across the valley, but inside it was warm and quiet and safe. For now, at least. For now. The next week passed in a kind of golden haze that Alden knew could not last, but could not bring himself to end. He and Gryaza had crossed some invisible line the night they held hands by the fire, and now there was a new ease between them, a tenderness that colored every interaction. In the mornings, Alden would wake to find Gryaza already up, making breakfast with the supplies from his pantry. She had learned his preferences, knew he liked his eggs over easy and his tea strong. They would eat together at the kitchen table, talking about small things or sitting in comfortable silence. During the days, they worked side by side. Gryaza's shoulder was nearly healed now, and she insisted on helping with the heavier chores. She was remarkably strong, able to lift loads that would have made Alden struggle. But she was also gentle with the animals, patient with his elderly mare and soft-spoken with his small flock of sheep. In the evenings, they would cook dinner together, moving around the small kitchen in an unconscious dance, anticipating each other's needs. After the meal, they would sit by the fire and talk, really talk, sharing stories and dreams and fears. Alden told her about his childhood, about growing up poor in a city and joining the army because it was the only way to eat. Gryaza told him about the orc traditions she missed, about the songs her mother used to sing and the legends of her people. And sometimes they did not talk at all. Sometimes they just sat close together, shoulders touching, watching the flames, and that was enough. Alden knew he was falling in love with her. It was a quiet, inevitable thing, like water wearing down stone. Every time she laughed at his jokes, every time she looked at him with those warm, amber eyes, every time she touched his hand in passing, he fell a little deeper. He had never felt this way about anyone, this complete certainty that she was important, that she was right, that she was his. But he also knew it was impossible. Gryza was a fugitive with a price on her head. He was a human who had already risked too much. Even if they somehow survived the immediate danger, what kind of life could they have together? Human-orc relationships were taboo, forbidden by law in some places and by custom everywhere else. They would be outcasts, hunted not just by the soldiers but by society itself. And yet, when he looked at her, none of that seemed to matter. 3 weeks after Gryza had first arrived, everything changed. Alden was in the barn, mucking out Dusty's stall when he heard the sound of many horses approaching. His blood turned to ice. He set down his pitchfork and moved to the barn door, staying in the shadows where he could see without being seen. A full company of soldiers was riding into his yard, at least 30 men, and at their head was Captain Dryden. Alden's mind raced. This was not a routine patrol. This was an assault. Somehow Dryden had figured it out, or someone had talked. Either way, they were out of time. He turned and ran back to the house, bursting through the door. Gryza was at the table, mending a shirt, and she looked up in alarm at his expression. "They are here," Alden said. "A full company." "We have maybe 2 minutes." All the color drained from Gryza's face, but her voice was steady. "I will run. Draw them away from you. You can say I broke in, that you did not know I was here." "No," Alden said fiercely. "That is not happening. We do this together or not at all." "Alden, you will die." "Then we die together," he said. "I am not letting them take you." Before Gryza could argue, there was a hammering on the door. "Kerrick," Dryden's voice boomed. "Open up. We know she is in there." Alden and Gryza looked at each other for one long moment. Then Alden grabbed his hunting knife from the table and moved to stand between Gryza and the door. "Stay behind me," he said quietly. The door exploded inward as soldiers kicked it off its hinges. They poured into the room, swords drawn, and Dryden followed, his face triumphant. "I knew it," Dryden said. "I knew you were lying, Kerrick. Thomas said he saw movement in your house, saw 2 shadows by the fire, and here you are, harboring a murderer." "She is not a murderer," Alden said, his voice cold. "She was defending herself from a rapist, and I will not let you take her." "You do not have a choice," Dryden said. He nodded to his men. "Seize them both." The soldiers moved forward, and Alden raised his knife. He knew it was futile, knew he was about to die, but he would not go down without a fight. If he could buy Gryza even a few seconds, maybe she could escape through the back window. Then Gryza stepped in front of him. "Stop," she said, her voice ringing with command. "This human has done nothing wrong. I forced him to help me. I threatened his life. He is innocent." "Gryza, no." Alden started, but she turned and gave him a look that silenced him. "You promised me a debt," she said quietly, in a voice only he could hear. "This is how you repay it. You live. You survive. You do not throw your life away for me." "I am not letting you do this," Alden said, his voice breaking. "You do not have a choice." She echoed Dryden's words, but with infinite gentleness. Then she turned back to the soldiers and held out her wrists. "I surrender. Take me, but let him go." "No deal," Dryden said. "Kerrick aided a fugitive. That is treason. You both hang." And that was when the back door exploded inward. Orcs poured into the room, huge and terrifying, their weapons gleaming. There were at least a dozen of them, all wearing the markings of the Iron Peak clan. The soldiers fell back in shock, and Alden stared in disbelief. At the head of the orc warriors was a woman who could only be Gryaz's mother. She was massive, nearly 7 feet tall, with muscles like iron and scars that told of 100 battles. Her green skin was darker than Gryaz's, her tusks larger and more pronounced. She wore armor made of leather and bone, and she carried a war axe that looked like it could split a tree. "Mother," Gryaza breathed. "Daughter," the orc woman replied, her voice like gravel. "You took your time." "How did you?" Gryaza started. "You think I would not feel it when you were in danger," her mother said. "I have been tracking you for days, saw the soldiers gathering, knew they were planning something, thought I would arrive to find you dead. Instead, I find you have made a pet of a human." "He is not a pet," Gryaza said fiercely. "He saved my life, hid me, healed me, protected me at the cost of his own safety. Alden Kerrick is a man of honor." Gryaza's mother looked at Alden with eyes like chips of amber, assessing him in a single glance. "Is this true, human? You sheltered my daughter knowing what it would cost you." "Yes," Alden said, meeting her gaze steadily, "and I would do it again." "Why?" It was the same question Gryaza had asked over and over, and this time Alden gave the whole truth. "Because I love her," he said simply. "Because she is worth dying for." The room went completely silent. Gryaza's eyes went wide, and Alden saw tears shimmer in them. Her mother's expression did not change, but something flickered in her gaze. "You love her," the orc woman repeated, as though testing the words. "A human loves my daughter." "Yes," Alden said. Dryden recovered from his shock. "This is treason. They are all under arrest. Soldiers, attack." But before his men could move, Gryaza's mother spoke a single word in the orc language. The warriors with her spread out, forming a wall between the humans and their prey. The message was clear. Anyone who tried to take Gryaza would have to go through them first. "You will start a war," Dryden hissed. "Perhaps," Gryaza's mother said. "Or perhaps you will be smart and walk away." "My daughter killed in self-defense. This human sheltered her out of compassion. Neither are crimes in the eyes of my clan. We take them under our protection. Challenge that if you dare." Dryden looked at the orc warriors, at their size and their weapons and the absolute certainty in their eyes. He was a cruel man, but he was not stupid. 30 human soldiers against a dozen orc warriors in close quarters would be a bloodbath, and even if he won, the political consequences would be devastating. The fragile peace between humans and orcs would shatter, and kingdoms would burn. "This is not over," Dryden said finally. "We will report this to the king. There will be consequences." "Then you will know where to find us," Gryaza's mother said. "The Iron Peak Mountains. Come if you dare." Dryden stared at her for a long moment, then gestured sharply to his men. "Fall back." "We are leaving." The soldiers filed out, their expressions murderous but their weapons sheathed. Dryden was the last to go, pausing at the door to look back at Alden. "You chose the wrong side, Kerrick," he said quietly, "and you are going to regret it." Then he was gone, and the sound of horses faded into the distance. Alden let out a breath he had not realized he was holding and nearly collapsed. Gryaza caught him, her good arm going around his waist. "I've got you," she said softly. Her mother watched them with an unreadable expression. Then she spoke in the orc language, quick and sharp. Gryaza replied in the same tongue, her voice earnest. They went back and forth for a moment, and Alden wished desperately that he could understand what they were saying. Finally, Gryaza's mother sighed, a sound like a bear waking from hibernation. "My daughter tells me you spoke truth," she said to Alden in human speech. "That you love her, that you would give your life for her." "I would," Alden said. "You understand what that means. A human and an orc. You will be cast out by your people. You will never be able to return to your old life. You will be hunted, hated, forever on the run." "I understand," Alden said, "and I do not care. I want to be with her if she will have me." Gryaza's mother looked at her daughter, And you, child, you love this human. Gryaza met her mother's eyes without flinching. I do, more than I thought possible. Then you are a fool, her mother said, but there was no anger in her voice, only a deep sadness. Both of you are fools, but I suppose I have no room to talk. I loved your father, and that was equally foolish. And equally worth it. She stepped forward and gripped Alden's shoulder with one massive hand. Her grip was strong enough to make him wince. You will come with us to Iron Peak, she said. Both of you. The clan will decide what to do with you. I warn you, human, they will not be welcoming. You will have to prove yourself worthy of my daughter. You will have to fight for your place among us. I will, Alden said. Whatever it takes. Good. She released him and turned to her warriors. Gather supplies. We leave within the hour. The human soldiers may return with reinforcements, and I do not want to be here when they do. The orcs moved through the house with surprising efficiency, packing food and water and anything else that might be useful. Alden stood in the ruins of his kitchen, looking at the home he had built, knowing he was about to leave it all behind. Gryaza came to stand beside him, slipping her hand into his. Are you all right? She asked. I have no idea, Alden admitted. I just lost my home, my farm, my entire life. I am about to travel into orc territory with no guarantee I will survive, and I think I might be the happiest I have ever been. Gryaza laughed, the sound bright and free. You are definitely a fool, Alden Kerrick. Then we match, he said, squeezing her hand. They had perhaps 30 minutes to prepare. Alden packed what little he could carry. Clothes, his medical supplies, the small amount of money he had saved. He took one last look around his house, committing it to memory, then walked out the door without looking back. Gryaza's mother had provided horses for both of them, sturdy mountain ponies bred for rough terrain. Alden swung into the saddle, feeling the weight of his decision settle over him. He was leaving everything he knew, everything safe and familiar, to venture into an unknown future with a woman he had known for less than a month. And yet, when Gryaza smiled at him from her own horse, her eyes full of hope and love and promise, he knew he was making the right choice. They rode out as the sun was setting, the orc warriors surrounding them in a protective formation. Alden did not look back at his farm. That life was over. Whatever came next, he would face it at Gryaza's side, and that was enough. The journey to the Iron Peak Mountains took 3 weeks, and every day of it tested Alden in ways he had not imagined. The orc warriors set a brutal pace, traveling from dawn to dusk, with only brief stops for food and water. They moved through wild country, avoiding human settlements and staying to paths that only they knew. Alden, who had thought himself fit from years of farm work, quickly discovered that he was soft compared to these hardened fighters, but he never complained. He pushed through the exhaustion and the aching muscles, determined to prove he was worthy of their respect. And slowly, grudgingly, some of the warriors began to warm to him. There was Kruger, a massive male orc with a scar across his face and a laugh like thunder. He took it upon himself to teach Alden some of the orc language during the evening camps, patiently correcting his pronunciation and roaring with amusement when Alden accidentally said something obscene. There was Shayza, a female warrior who was friends with Gryaza. She was more reserved than Kruger, but Alden earned her respect when he helped her treat an infected wound on her leg using his medical skills. After that, she would nod to him in passing, which he learned was high praise from her, and there was Throck, Gryaza's mother. She was harder to read, watching Alden constantly with those piercing amber eyes. He could never tell if she approved of him or was simply waiting for him to prove himself unworthy. But she did not send him away, and for now, that was enough. Gryaza rode beside Alden whenever the terrain allowed it, and their bond deepened with every mile. They talked about everything and nothing, sharing dreams and fears. At night, when they made camp, Alden would spread his bedroll near hers, and they would lie side by side under the stars, their hands clasped between them. One night, about 2 weeks into the journey, Gryaza turned to him in the darkness. "Are you afraid?" she asked quietly. "Of what is coming?" "Terrified," Alden admitted. "I have no idea what to expect. I do not know if your clan will accept me. I do not know if I can survive in your world." "You can," Gryaza said fiercely. "You are stronger than you know, Alden, braver than you give yourself credit for." "I do not feel brave. I just feel like I am stumbling forward and hoping I do not fall." "That is what bravery is," Gryaza said. "Moving forward even when you are afraid." She leaned over and kissed him then, soft and sweet, and Alden felt his heart swell with an emotion so intense it hurt. He kissed her back, pouring everything he felt into that connection, all his love and hope and desperate need for this to work out somehow. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Gryaza rested her forehead against his. "I love you," she whispered. "No matter what happens, I love you." "I love you too," Alden said. "Always." They reached the Iron Peak Mountains on the 23rd day of travel. Alden had expected something imposing, perhaps a fortress carved into the rock, but the orc settlement was more organic than that. It was built into the mountainside itself, a series of caves and stone structures that seemed to grow from the landscape. Smoke rose from dozens of cooking fires, and the air was filled with the sounds of activity, voices calling, hammers ringing, children laughing. As they rode into the settlement, orcs stopped what they were doing to stare. Alden felt the weight of hundreds of eyes on him, assessing, judging. He sat straighter in his saddle, refusing to show fear even though his heart was pounding. Throck led them to the largest structure, a great hall carved from the living rock. Inside, the space was vast and warm, lit by a central fire pit and dozens of torches. At the far end, seated on a throne made of stone and iron, was the clan chief. He was ancient, his green skin weathered and marked with countless scars. His tusks were yellowed with age and his eyes were like dark pits. But there was power in him still, a presence that filled the room and made Alden want to kneel. "Father," Throck said, bowing her head respectfully. "I have brought my daughter home, and a guest." The chief's gaze moved to Alden and he felt pinned in place like an insect on a board. "A human," the chief said, his voice surprisingly soft. "In Iron Peak, this is unusual." "This human saved Gryaza's life," Throck said, "sheltered her, protected her from soldiers who would have killed her. He risked everything for her, and she loves him." The chief was silent for a long moment, then he spoke directly to Alden. "Is this true, human? You love my granddaughter?" "Yes, chief," Alden said, keeping his voice steady. "With all my heart. And you understand what you are asking. To be with her, you must become one of us. You must live by our laws, fight our battles, share our burdens. You will never see your own kind again. You will be forever changed." "I understand," Alden said, "and I accept it. I want to be with Gryaza. I want to build a life with her here among your people. If you will have me." The chief studied him, and Alden had the uncomfortable feeling that he was being read like a book, every secret laid bare. "You are a warrior," the chief observed. "I can see it in the way you stand, the way you carry yourself, but you have left that life behind." "I have," Alden agreed. "I fought in the human wars, I killed. And I decided I could not do it anymore. I retired, became a farmer, I wanted peace. And yet here you are, in the heart of orc territory, ready to fight again if you must. Why?" "Because peace without her is meaningless," Alden said simply. "I would rather live in danger at her side than in safety alone." The chief's expression did not change, but something flickered in his eyes. He looked at Gryaza, who stood straight and proud beside Alden. "And you, child, you truly wish to bond with this human?" "I do, grandfather," Gryaza said. "He is good and kind and brave. He has proven his worth to me 100 times over. I want to spend my life with him." The chief sighed, a sound like wind through stone. "Very well, I will allow this, but there are conditions. The human must prove himself to the clan. He must complete 3 trials to show he is worthy to be one of us. If he succeeds, he will be accepted as Gryaza's mate and a full member of our people. If he fails—" The chief let the sentence hang, the implication clear. "I accept," Alden said before he could think better of it. "What are the trials?" "The first is a test of strength," the chief said. "You will fight one of our warriors in single combat. You do not need to win, only to prove you will not break. The second is a test of skill. You will hunt and bring back a mountain goat from the high peaks, alone. The third is a test of spirit. You will spend a night in the whispering caves where the voices of the ancestors speak. If you emerge with your mind intact, you will have proven yourself worthy." Each trial sounded more terrifying than the last, but Alden did not hesitate. "When do I start?" he asked. "Tomorrow," the chief said. "For tonight you are our guest. Eat, rest, prepare yourself. You will need all your strength." That night a feast was held in the great hall. Alden sat beside Gryaza, trying not to be overwhelmed by the noise and the crowd of orcs around him. The food was strange but good: roasted meat and root vegetables seasoned with herbs he did not recognize. The drink was powerful, a fermented beverage that burned going down and left him pleasantly warm. Gryaza stayed close to him, translating conversations and explaining customs. Alden was grateful for her presence, a steady anchor in the chaos. Several times, orc warriors approached to size him up, to ask questions or make veiled challenges. Alden met each one with polite firmness, refusing to be intimidated. Later, as the feast was winding down, Throck came to sit beside him. "You surprised me today," she said without preamble. "I expected you to hesitate, to try to negotiate, but you accepted the trials without question." "What choice did I have?" Alden said. "If this is what it takes to be with Gryaza, then I will do it. You could have chosen to leave, to return to your own people." "No," Alden said quietly, "I could not anymore. Gryaza is my home now. Wherever she is, that is where I belong." Throck studied him, then nodded slowly. "My mate said something similar many years ago. He was human like you, came to our mountains seeking trade and found love instead. The clan did not approve. They made him prove himself again and again until finally they could not deny that he belonged with us, with me." "What happened to him?" Alden asked, though he already knew the answer from what Gryaza had told him. "He died," Throck said simply. "A rockslide 10 years ago, but we had 2 decades together and they were the best years of my life. He gave me Gryaza, who is my greatest joy. And he taught me that love is worth fighting for, no matter how impossible it seems." She stood and placed a hand on Alden's shoulder, the same gesture she had made back at his farm. "You remind me of him," she said. "You have the same stubborn courage, the same foolish heart. I think you will survive the trials, and I think you will make my daughter happy. That is all I ask." "I will do my best," Alden said. "See that you do," Throck said, then walked away, leaving Alden staring after her in surprise. Gryaza leaned against him, her head on his shoulder. "She likes you," she said, amusement in her voice. "She has a strange way of showing it," Alden muttered, and Gryaza laughed. They stayed like that for a while, comfortable in each other's presence. Then Gryaza spoke, her voice low and serious. "The trials are dangerous, Alden. People have died attempting them, I know. If something happens to you, if you are hurt or—" "I will be fine," Alden said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "I have survived worse. Promise me, Gryza said, turning to look at him with desperate eyes. Promise me you will be careful, that you will not take unnecessary risks. I cannot lose you. Not now. Alden cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing over her cheekbones. I promise I will do everything in my power to come back to you. I did not come all this way just to die in some trial. I have plans for us, Gryza. A whole life we are going to build together, and nothing is going to stop me from making that happen. She kissed him then, fierce and desperate, and he kissed her back with equal intensity. Around them, the feast continued, but in that moment they were the only two people in the world. The first trial began at dawn. Alden was led to a fighting ring carved into the stone of the mountainside, a circular space about 30 feet across with a crowd of orcs gathered around to watch. His opponent was already waiting. Kruger, the massive warrior who had befriended him during the journey. Kruger grinned, showing all his tusks. Do not take this personally, little human. I am going to beat you bloody, but it is nothing against you. Understood, Alden said, trying to calm his racing heart. He had been given basic leather armor and a wooden practice sword, not enough to seriously hurt anyone but sufficient to make the fight realistic. Kruger had the same equipment, but on his massive frame the armor looked almost comically small. Throck stood at the edge of the ring, acting as judge. The trial begins when I drop this flag. It ends when one fighter yields or cannot continue. Begin. The flag fell and Kruger charged. Alden barely had time to get his sword up before the orc crashed into him like a battering ram. The impact drove him back, his feet skidding on the stone, and only his combat training kept him from being immediately overwhelmed. He deflected Kruger's first strike, then the second, his muscles screaming in protest at the force behind each blow. Kruger was not just strong, he was fast, far faster than someone his size had any right to be. Alden found himself on the defensive, retreating around the ring, blocking and dodging as best he could. But every block sent shockwaves up his arms, and he knew he could not keep this up forever. He needed a different strategy. Instead of trying to match Kruger's strength, Alden focused on speed and precision. He was smaller, lighter, more agile. He could use that. The next time Kruger swung, Alden did not block. He ducked under the strike and came up inside Kruger's guard, slamming his wooden sword into the orc's ribs. It was like hitting a tree, but Kruger grunted in surprise and stepped back. Alden pressed his advantage, striking fast and low, aiming for joints and vulnerable spots. He was not trying to win, just to prove he would not break, that he could hold his own. Kruger adapted quickly, his initial casual approach giving way to genuine focus. The fight became a brutal dance, wood cracking against wood, feet shifting on stone. Alden took hits that would have floored a lesser man, but he stayed on his feet through sheer determination. His ribs ached, his arms were numb, and he was pretty sure his lip was bleeding, but he did not yield. The crowd of watching orcs began to murmur, their voices rising in what might have been approval. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, Throck raised her hand. Enough, she called. The trial is complete. Kruger stepped back immediately, lowering his weapon. He was barely winded while Alden was gasping for breath and swaying on his feet, but the big orc was grinning. You fight well, little human, Kruger said. Better than I expected. You have earned my respect. He offered his hand and Alden took it, allowing the orc to pull him into a back-slapping embrace that nearly knocked him over again. Throck approached, her expression unreadable. You did not win, she said. No, Alden agreed, spitting blood. But I did not break either. No, Throck said, and a small smile touched her lips. You did not. The first trial is past. Rest now. Tomorrow the second trial begins. Gryaza was waiting when he limped out of the ring, her face tight with worry. She helped him back to the quarters they had been given, a small cave room with a bed and a fire pit, and began tending his injuries with gentle hands. "You are a fool," she said as she cleaned a cut on his forehead. "You could have been killed." "But I was not," Alden pointed out. "This time." The next trial is even more dangerous. The mountain goats live on the highest peaks where the air is thin and the rocks are treacherous, and you have never hunted in mountains before. "Then I will learn," Alden said. "I am not giving up now, Gryaza. I am halfway there." She looked at him with such love and exasperation that he could not help but smile. "You really are the most stubborn man I have ever met." "I learned from the best," he said, and kissed her, tasting blood and salt and the sweetness that was uniquely her. The second trial began the next morning. Alden was given a hunting bow, a quiver of arrows and basic supplies, then pointed toward the high peaks. The goal was simple: bring back a mountain goat. The execution, however, was anything but. The climb took all day. Alden followed narrow trails that wound up the mountainside, the air growing colder and thinner with every step. His ribs still ached from the fight with Kruger, and more than once he had to stop and rest, his lungs burning. But he pushed on, driven by the image of Gryaza waiting for him below. By the time he reached the high peaks where the goats lived, the sun was setting and the temperature was dropping fast. Alden found a sheltered spot among the rocks and made a small fire, careful to keep it hidden. He could not afford to spook the goats before he even had a chance to hunt them. He spent a cold, miserable night huddled by the fire, trying not to think about how far he was from safety. Every sound made him jump, expecting mountain lions or worse. But nothing attacked, and when dawn came, he forced himself to eat some dried meat and drink from his water skin, then set out to find his quarry. The goats were incredibly elusive, moving across terrain that seemed impossible to navigate. Alden tracked them for hours, his frustration growing. He was a decent shot with a bow, but that meant nothing if he could not get close enough to take a shot. Finally, near midday, he spotted a small herd on a rocky outcropping about 100 yards away. Alden crept closer, moving with the patience he had learned as a soldier, using every scrap of cover the mountain provided. Sweat ran down his back despite the cold, and his hands shook slightly as he knocked an arrow closer. Closer. The goats were wary, their heads coming up at every sound. But Alden moved like a ghost, and finally he was within range. He picked out a young male, drew the bow, held his breath, and released. The arrow flew true, taking the goat in the chest. It stumbled and fell, and the rest of the herd bolted, disappearing into the rocks. Alden approached cautiously, his heart pounding. The goat was still alive, its eyes rolling in pain and fear. Alden knelt beside it and used his knife to end its suffering quickly, whispering an apology. He had hunted before on his farm, but it never got easier. Taking a life, even for survival, always left him feeling hollow, but he did not have time to dwell on it. He needed to get the goat back to the settlement before nightfall, or he would be stuck on the mountain for another freezing night. Alden dressed the carcass to make it lighter, then hoisted it onto his shoulders and began the long climb down. The descent was even more treacherous than the climb up. The weight of the goat threw off his balance, and more than once he nearly fell. His legs were shaking with exhaustion, and the thin air made every breath a struggle. But he kept moving, step by painful step, driven by the knowledge that Gryaza was waiting. He reached the settlement just as the last light was fading from the sky. Alden staggered into the great hall and dropped the goat at the chief's feet, then collapsed onto his hands and knees, gasping for breath. The chief looked at the goat, then at Alden, and nodded slowly. "The second trial is past. Well done, human." Alden did not have the energy to respond. He just knelt there, shaking with exhaustion until Gryza appeared and helped him to his feet. "You did it," she whispered, tears shining in her eyes. "You actually did it." "One more," Alden said through cracked lips. "Just one more." The third trial was scheduled for 3 days later, to give Alden time to recover. He spent those days resting, eating, and trying not to think about what was coming. The Whispering Caves were legendary among the orcs, a place where the spirits of the ancestors were said to dwell. Those who entered would hear voices, see visions, confront their deepest fears. Some emerged enlightened, others emerged broken, and some did not emerge at all. Gryza stayed close to him during those days as though afraid he might disappear. They talked about the future, about what their life might look like if he passed the third trial. Alden described the farm he wanted to build, a place where they could grow things and raise animals and live in peace. Gryza talked about the children she hoped they would have, half human and half orc, bridges between two worlds. It was a beautiful dream. Alden just had to survive one more night to make it real. On the day of the third trial, Throck led him to the Whispering Caves herself. The entrance was a narrow crack in the mountainside, barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through. Beyond it, darkness waited, absolute and impenetrable. "You go in alone," Throck said. "No fire, no light, no weapons. Just yourself and whatever you find in the darkness. You will stay until dawn. If you emerge sane, you pass. If you do not emerge or if you come out broken, you fail." "What will I face in there?" Alden asked. "That depends on you," Throck said. "The caves show you what you need to see or what you fear to see. The ancestors will judge your spirit and they are not kind." "Comforting," Alden muttered. Gryza stepped forward and took his hands in hers. "You can do this," she said fiercely. "You are stronger than you know. Whatever you see in there, remember that I am waiting for you. Remember that we have a future to build." Alden kissed her, trying to memorize the feel of her lips, the warmth of her body, the love in her eyes. Then he turned and walked into the darkness. The crack in the rock was tight, forcing him to turn sideways and shuffle through. For a moment he was stuck, the stone pressing in from all sides, and panic flared hot in his chest. Then he pushed through and stumbled into a larger space. It was utterly black, darker than any night he had ever experienced. Alden could not see his hand in front of his face. He could not see anything, but he could hear. Whispers filled the air, dozens of voices speaking in the orc language, overlapping and echoing until they became a wall of sound. Alden could not understand the words, but he could feel the weight of them, pressing down on him like a physical force. He tried to move forward, but almost immediately stumbled over something. He went down hard, his hands scraping on rough stone. When he pushed himself up, the whispers grew louder, angrier. Alden forced himself to breathe slowly, to think. Panicking would not help. He needed to find a wall, to orient himself, to wait out the night. He crawled forward carefully, feeling his way across the stone. The whispers followed him, sometimes seeming to come from right beside his ear, sometimes from far away. He tried to ignore them, to focus on the physical reality of the cave, but it was hard when he could not see anything. Then the visions began. At first, Alden thought he was imagining things, that his mind was creating images to fill the darkness. But they were too vivid, too real. He saw himself back in the army, standing over the body of a man he had killed, his hands red with blood. He saw the faces of every person who had died because of him, accusing and hollow-eyed. "Murderer," the voices whispered. "Killer, you think you can escape what you are. You think love will wash away the blood." Alden closed his eyes, but it did not help. The visions were inside his head, unavoidable. He saw his farm burning, saw Dryden standing over Gryza's body with a bloody sword, saw himself alone and broken, having failed everyone he cared about. "Not real," Alden said out loud, his voice cracking. "None of this is real, it is just fear, just guilt." "Is it?" the voices asked. "Or is it the truth you refuse to face? You are a killer, Alden Kerrick, you always have been, and you always will be." "No," Alden said, louder now. "I was a soldier. I did what I had to do to survive. But that does not define me. I chose to leave that life behind. I chose to be better." "And look where it got you," the voices mocked. "Hiding a fugitive, running from the law, destroying your own life for a woman you barely know." "I know her," Alden said fiercely. "I know she is kind and brave and strong. I know she makes me want to be a better man. I know I love her more than I have ever loved anything. And that is not destruction. That is salvation." The visions shifted. He saw Gryaza, but not as she was now. He saw her old and gray, their children grown and gone, the two of them sitting together in the sun. He saw a life full of simple joys, of hard work and laughter and love. He saw the farm he had described to her, real and thriving, a place of peace. "Is this what you want?" The voices asked, but they were gentler now, curious rather than cruel. "Yes," Alden said, "more than anything." "Then fight for it," the voices said. "Do not let fear or guilt or doubt steal your future. You have been given a rare gift, Alden Kerrick, a second chance at life. A love that crosses all boundaries. Do not waste it." The visions faded, and the whispers quieted to a soft murmur. Alden sat in the darkness, tears running down his face, feeling as though something inside him had cracked open. All the pain and guilt he had been carrying for years, all the weight of his past, was still there. But it felt lighter now, as though he had been given permission to forgive himself. He did not know how much time passed. He sat in the darkness, breathing, thinking, letting the voices wash over him. At some point he slept, and when he woke, there was light filtering through the crack in the rock. Dawn. He had survived. Alden crawled toward the light, his body stiff and aching, and squeezed through the crack. Outside, Gryaza was waiting, and when she saw him, she cried out and ran to him, catching him as he stumbled. "You are all right," she sobbed, holding him tight. "You are all right." "I am," Alden said, his voice hoarse. "I am all right." Throck approached, her expression carefully neutral. "You passed the trial," she said. "The ancestors have judged you worthy. You are now a member of our clan with all the rights and responsibilities that entails, and you are free to bond with Gryaza if she still wishes it." "I do," Gryaza said immediately. "I wish it more than anything." "Then it is done," Throck said, and for the first time she smiled at Alden, a real smile that transformed her stern face. "Welcome to the family, Alden Kerrick." The bonding ceremony was held that night, under a sky full of stars. It was not like a human wedding. There were no priests, no elaborate rituals. Instead, Alden and Gryaza stood before the clan, holding hands, and spoke the vows that would bind them together. "I, Alden Kerrick, take you, Gryaza, daughter of Throck, to be my mate and my partner," Alden said, his voice strong and clear. "I promise to stand by your side through all hardships, to protect you and cherish you, to build a life with you that honors both our peoples. From this day forward, you are my home and my heart." Gryaza's eyes shone with tears as she spoke her own vows. "I, Gryaza, daughter of Throck, take you, Alden Kerrick, to be my mate and my partner. I promise to stand by your side through all hardships, to protect you and cherish you, to build a life with you that bridges our worlds. From this day forward, you are my home and my heart." Throck stepped forward and bound their hands together with a leather cord, tying a knot that would symbolize their union. "You are now bonded," she declared. "Two souls made one. The clan recognizes this bond and will honor it. May your lives be long and your love be strong." The clan erupted in cheers, and Alden found himself swept into a celebration that lasted well into the night. There was food and drink and music, the deep drumming rhythms that the orcs loved. Alden danced with Gryza, laughing as she taught him the steps, stumbling and happy and more content than he had ever been later, when the celebration had quieted and most of the clan had gone to sleep. Alden and Gryza sat together at the edge of the settlement, looking out over the mountains. "We did it," Gryza said softly. "We actually did it." "We did," Alden agreed. "I am officially an orc now. My mother would be so confused," Gryza laughed. "Do you regret it, giving up everything to be here?" Alden thought about his farm, his quiet life, the future he had planned before Gryza crashed into his world. Then he looked at the woman beside him, his wife, his partner, his home. "Not for a second," he said. "This is where I belong, with you." Gryza leaned her head on his shoulder. "I love you, Alden Kerrick." "I love you too, Gryza Kerrick." She laughed at that. "Is that how human names work? I take yours." "It can work however we want it to," Alden said. "We are making our own rules now." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel overhead, and Alden felt a peace he had never known before. The future was uncertain. There would be challenges ahead, difficulties they could not yet imagine, but they would face them together, and that made all the difference. The seasons turned, and Alden and Gryza built their life in the mountains. True to his word, Alden started a small farm on a patch of arable land near the settlement. It was harder work than he had expected, coaxing crops from the rocky soil at such high altitude, but he was patient and persistent. Gryza helped when she could, though she spent most of her time training with the other warriors, maintaining the skills her mother had taught her. They built a house together, a sturdy structure of stone and wood that could withstand the harsh mountain winters. It was small but comfortable, with a large hearth and windows that looked out over the valley. Alden took pride in every detail, wanting to create a space that was truly theirs. The clan gradually accepted him. He would never be a true orc, of course. He was too small, too soft, too human. But he proved his worth in 100 small ways. He shared his medical knowledge, treating injuries and illnesses that might otherwise have been fatal. He taught some of the younger orcs to read and write in the human language, skills that could be useful for trade. And he fought when necessary, standing shoulder to shoulder with the warriors when raiders or wild beasts threatened the settlement. Slowly, grudgingly, he earned their respect. Throck became something like a friend, though she would never admit it. She would come to dinner at their house sometimes, sharing stories of Gryza's father and the early days of their relationship. Alden learned that his journey was not unique. Other humans had joined the clan over the years, though they were rare. Each had faced their own trials, their own struggles to belong. "The key is stubbornness," Throck told him one evening, her eyes twinkling with amusement. "You humans are good at that, at least. You refuse to give up even when common sense says you should. It is infuriating, but also admirable." "I will take that as a compliment," Alden said. "It was meant as one," Throck said, raising her cup in a toast. 2 years after Alden first arrived in the mountains, Gryza told him she was pregnant. They had been hoping for this, talking about children since the day they bonded, but now that it was real, Alden found himself terrified. What if something went wrong? What if the child was not healthy? What if he was a terrible father? Gryza saw the fear in his eyes and took his hands in hers. "We will figure it out together," she said. "Just like we have figured out everything else. You are going to be a wonderful father, Alden, I know it." "How can you be so sure?" he asked. "Because I have watched you with the children here. You are patient and kind and gentle. You listen to them, treat them with respect. That is what matters. Not whether you know all the answers, but whether you care enough to try." Alden pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "I am going to do my best," he promised. "For you and for our child, I swear it." The pregnancy was not easy. Gryza had complications in the later months, and there were times when Alden feared he might lose both her and the baby. But Throck was there, providing support and knowledge from her own experience, and the clan rallied around them, offering help and encouragement. When the baby finally came, it was a long and difficult labor. Alden stayed by Gryza's side the entire time, holding her hand, whispering words of love and encouragement. And when he finally heard the baby's first cry, he wept with relief and joy. Their daughter was perfect. She had Gryza's green skin and amber eyes, but Alden's brown hair and softer features. Her tusks were tiny, barely visible, and her ears were only slightly pointed. She was a true blend of both their heritages, a bridge between two worlds. They named her Kira after Gryza's grandmother, and from the moment Alden held her in his arms, he knew his life had changed forever. This tiny, fragile being was his responsibility, his joy, his future. He would do anything to protect her, to give her a good life. As Kira grew, Alden marveled at every milestone. Her first smile, her first word, her first steps. She was curious and fearless, exploring every corner of the settlement with boundless energy. She had Gryza's strength and determination, but also Alden's gentleness and compassion. The clan adored her. She was living proof that humans and orcs could not only coexist, but create something beautiful together. The other children played with her without hesitation, and the adults treated her with affection and pride. Alden often thought about the night he had hidden Gryza in his hayloft, the choice he had made that changed everything. If he could go back and speak to his younger self, the man who was alone and uncertain, he would tell him not to be afraid. He would tell him that the best things in life come from taking risks, from choosing love over safety, from believing that people are worth fighting for. One evening, when Kira was 4 years old, Alden sat on the porch of their house, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and red. Gryza came to sit beside him, and Kira climbed into his lap, chattering about her day. "Papa, I caught a frog today," she announced proudly. "A big one. Uncle Kruger said it was the biggest he has ever seen." "Uncle Kruger exaggerates," Alden said with a smile, "but I am sure it was very impressive." "It was," Kira insisted. "Can we go catch more tomorrow? We will see," Gryza said, smoothing back her daughter's hair. "First you need to eat your dinner and go to bed." Kira pouted but did not argue, running off to play for a few more minutes before bedtime. Alden watched her go, his heart full. "She is growing so fast," he said. "Too fast," Gryza agreed. "Sometimes I wish I could freeze time, keep her this age forever." "I know what you mean," Alden said, "but I also cannot wait to see who she becomes, what she will do with her life." "She will be amazing," Gryza said with certainty. "How could she not be with parents like us?" Alden laughed. "Your confidence is inspiring." "It is not confidence," Gryza said, turning to look at him. "It is love and faith, and the knowledge that we have built something good here, Alden, something worth protecting." He leaned over and kissed her, soft and sweet. "I could not have done it without you." "Yes, you could have," Gryza said, "but I am glad you did not have to." They sat together as the sun disappeared behind the mountains, and Alden thought about the journey that had brought him here, from a lonely farm in a human valley to a home among the orcs. From hiding a fugitive beneath his hayloft to building a family that bridged two worlds. It had not been easy. There had been fear and pain and moments when he thought he might not survive, but every step had been worth it. Every trial, every challenge, every moment of doubt had led him to this, a life full of love and purpose and belonging. He had found his home, not in a place but in the people who filled his days with laughter and warmth. In Gryza, who had trusted him when she had every reason not to. In Kira, who represented hope for a better future. In the clan, who had accepted him despite all the reasons they should not have. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Alden made a silent promise. He would protect this life he had built, this family he loved with everything he had. He would teach Kira to be strong and kind, to bridge the gap between humans and orcs with compassion and understanding. And he would love Gryza with his whole heart, every day for the rest of his life. It was a good promise, a good life. And as Gryza leaned her head on his shoulder and Kira's laughter echoed from inside the house, Alden knew that he was exactly where he was meant to be, home.